So here in C#, I've got my interface created. I now need to write some code for each of the 4 buttons to make them functional. And the simplest way to do that in C# is in my interface design. I'm going to double click on the button that I want to code. So I'm going to code this addition button. I'm going to double click on it. And it takes me into the code editor. Now there's some code here already for us. And this code is essential for C# to work correctly. Everything occurs within something called a namespace. Don't need to worry about what that is for now, but notice that it is bookended by a curly bracket, a left curly bracket, and a right curly bracket, and everything is indented within those curly brackets. Then I have another statement here that says public partial class form1 : form. This is our designation for the code that goes with our particular form of this project, or our window for this project, which was named form1. It also has a set of curly brackets. And then inside of that is all the code that is tied to this form. There's a piece of code here that says public form1 and another set of curly brackets. This says initialize component. This is a procedure. This is an essential procedure for our project to work correctly. And at this point in the course, we're just going to leave this public form1 just as it always is, of just initialize component. We might make some changes to it later in the semester. What I want to focus in on is this code block that says private void btn add _ click. I double clicked on that btn add, and that generated this piece of code. This is a code called a event procedure, and the particular event that is being handled here has a name that it gave it, that C# gave it, a btn add _ click. I could change this and name it Fred, and it wouldn't care. But it's kind of meaningful. It says this is the code I want to execute when the user clicks the btn add button. Now there are some things after the parentheses. For now we're going to ignore that. But notice there's another set of curly brackets here. And the code that I want to have execute when the user clicks this button, I'm going to type in between those curly brackets. I don't expect you to understand the code at this point. We will get to that as we progress through the course. What I want you to see is the process we go through in adding code to a project. So I'm going to start out with a line of code. This is double A, comma, B, comma, C. And in C# we have to close most of our statements or end our statements with a semicolon. My next line of code, A equals double dot parse txt first num dot text and a curly bracket or a semicolon. Next statement's almost the same. B equals double dot parse txt second num dot text semicolon. C is going to equal A plus B semicolon, and txt solution equals C dot toString, set of parentheses and a semicolon. And you'll notice I got a little red curly underline here. That's a visual clue that there's something the editor doesn't like. And actually I made a slight mistake here in that this should have been txt solution dot text. Now if I click behind it, that little curly underline goes away. Okay, so that's my code for this button. Not a lot of code there. Here's what it does, is I'm setting aside in memory 3 locations that I'm naming A, B, and C. I could have named them anything I wanted as long as I follow some conventions of how I name them. It's going to contain a value in memory that is of a double data type. Double is a numeric value that may contain a decimal. The next line of code here, A equals double dot parse dot txt first num dot text. This might look a little bit familiar with the txt first num. That txt first num was one of our text boxes we created. And we set the text property to it, initially to 12. I'm going to take whatever the text value is there in that text box that the user might have entered a value into, and I'm going to convert that to a double numeric value. That's what double.parse does. And I'm going to assign that to my memory location that I'm declaring as A. I'll do the same thing with txt second num, getting the text of that text box, converting it to a double value, and assigning it to the location that I've labeled B. Then I'm going to add A and B together and assign that to C. And then in my txt solution text box, I'm going to set the text property to the value of C, and because C is a number, I need to convert it to a string data type or a character data type, and that's what this toString does. So that's what's happening in my code. Let's see if it works. I'm going to click the little green triangle up here on the top. That's going to compile my code, create the executable, and pop that up on screen. And I can put some value in here. Let's just do 20 and 15. I'm going to click the plus sign, and it tells me that 20 plus 15 is 35. Now my other buttons don't do anything at this point, so we need to code those. So I'm going to close my executable. That's going to take me back to Visual Studio, and I'm back in the editor. And if I go back to the tab for my interface, that's the Design tab, I can double click on the minus button or the subtract button. It's going to give me another event procedure here. This one's called btn subtract underscore click. And it gives me the two curly brackets, and I can write my code here. Now my code here is basically going to be almost identical to what I did up on the addition code. So what I'm going to do is highlight through that code. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. And all I need to do is change this plus sign to a minus sign. I'm going to do a subtraction operation. Now let's test that. So I'm going to start debugging again. And I'll take the default values here, 12 and 5. So if I click the minus sign, it tells me that 12 minus 5 is 7. So let's do the multiplication the same way. I'm going to double click on the multiply button, btn multiply. My event is named btn multiply underscore click. Again, I'm going to paste that same code. I'm going to change the plus sign to an asterisk, which is the multiplication operator. And then I'm going to go back to my design form. I'm going to do the division button a little bit differently here. Actually, I'm going to go back to the addition button first. In our properties for btn add button, there's a little icon button with an icon of a lightning bolt. I'm going to click on that, and this shows me all the different events that are associated with that button. And you'll notice that for the click event of our addition button, there's an identifier here of btn add underscore click. That was the name of the procedure that gets executed when I click that button. Now, just to show you this, I'm going to change that to the name Fred. Again, this is just a name. I'm going to go back to this form. I'm going to click on that button. Notice the click event for that button is no longer there. But I'm going to type in Fred here. I could also come to this little drop down, and I could choose the different procedures that I have defined and choose Fred. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this so you can see it still works. So if I add 12 and 5, I get 17. It's executing the procedure that I've named Fred. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is create the procedure for our division button a little bit differently. I'm going to copy this code, and I'm going to come down here a little bit, paste it in, and let's just name it btn divide underscore click. And instead of this asterisk, I'm going to change it to a /. That's my code. But I need to link it to that button because I didn't double click the button to create that. So I'm going to click on this button, go into the event listing here in the properties, and let's choose btn divide underscore click. And now I'm going to execute this and see if it works. So 12 divided by 5 gives me 2.4. Okay, so everything works here in terms of our 4 buttons. We've coded our project. We've tested it. Now I need to go to the File menu and choose Save All.